Yo, what's going on, guys? Jay here, and today I'm dropping my review for Travis Scott's newly released 10-year-old mixtape onto DSPs, Days Before Rodeo. This tape is extremely hyped online. It is praised very highly, and honestly, this is maybe the first or second time I've heard it in full. If I did listen to it, it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago on SoundCloud because it was only available there for a while. So, like I said, a couple of these tracks I've heard. Mamacita, Don't Play, Drugs, You Should Try It, right? So not all of this is new content to me, but a good portion of it is. And right now this album is looking to debut #1 on Billboard, obviously, but also do huge numbers, possibly the biggest hip-hop record sale of the year first week. It'll be on the heels of Utopia, which is really only cementing Travis Scott's superstar status. I mean, he is really the top guy in hip-hop right now, no doubt. The numbers his 10-year-old mixtape is doing, crazy. One thing I really like about Days Before Rodeo is that it shows Travis still looking for his sound. You see, hasn't quite figured out who he is sonically yet, and that shows through here, and it is a good thing at points, but also a bad thing at points, because obviously Travis is very experimental here, and he is very much putting on. Listening to this, 10 years after its release, it is clear how influential and innovative and ahead of its time, I should say, Days Before Rodeo truly was. Now again, this is not, we'll get into it. In my opinion, it's a little bit of a mixed bag because unlike a lot of people who praise this album highly, I do not have any nostalgia for this tape. And as good as it is, I do think that's where a lot of its praise comes from. It was probably a huge moment to be a fan of this album, 10 years ago when it first came out, and to see the person that Travis Scott turned into and how big he became. I totally understand that. But this album very much gives off that youthful type of energy, similar to, in my opinion at least, artists like Lil Uzi Vert, who, at this point where I'm at in my life, I don't see myself revisiting this album a whole bunch. That's not to say that it's not good or that I don't like it, because I definitely do. It's just me, like 5-6 years ago, like if I listened to this when I was 16, I really would have loved it. Like I understand that hype and having that nostalgia for it. Now, I don't want to, it sounds like I'm going to bash this album getting into it, but if I had to describe it with one sentence that I came up with, it's that this album is experimental and influential, but made for a time that I lived through already. Now again, that's not to say that there's anything wrong with enjoying this album or any this or that, right? And it's also the fact that I think Travis has 3 or 4 albums better than this that I would rather go to. But this album really thrives on the youthful mosh pit party energy it brings. This is really a party album. And I'm not saying that to slander and be like, oh, this is only going up in the club, because it's not. It really does have its moments, and there's a lot of stuff that I enjoy about this project. Normally I come into an album review with some type of thesis, statement, whatever, but I'm just going to be going track by track, and I guess the important ideas or conclusions that I came to listening to this album that I would keep in mind throughout the review, and that I'll probably hit on, is again, that youthful party energy. And again, I'm still a youth. I'm 21, so it's not like I'm not relating to this, right? But it's just that big time, like, party, getting lit energy. It is that Travis is rapping like he's hungry now, and it's also the fact that he's generally rapping about the same type of things, mainly getting fucked up on alcohol and drugs and being with a lot of women. Those are the two main things that Travis Scott is talking about here, like in a lot of his music, to be fair, but over time he has diversified that content a little bit, and it does have the ability to be vulnerable, which he does not do at all here, except for one instance, which we'll talk about in a second. And again, I would say that's part of the reason why I don't resonate with this album too much, given the fact that there is not a lot to hold on content-wise. I do enjoy my mindless trap music that isn't about this or that, and is just about, the 3 W's of hip-hop, which I always talk about: women, weed, and wealth, that rappers rap about all the time. But again, there are other Travis Scott albums that I'm going to for that, like a Rodeo, for example. But anyway, let's get right into it, starting off with the intro. Days Before Rodeo, The Prayer. In a rare occasion, we get Travis Scott on a boom bap instrumental produced by Wonder Girl and Mike Dean. Mike Dean has a lot of credits in the production and songwriting on this album. I'll be saying his name a couple more times, which makes sense because not only is the production great, but the best productions here are very guitar and electric guitar heavy. Now, like the rest of this album, this sets up the soundscape very well. It is very eerie, it is nocturnal, it is psychedelic, and that is what this boom bap instrumental is. There is a blaring horn that goes throughout the track that adds an urgency to it. While Travis is rapping faster than you'll probably ever hear him in his career throughout this whole project. Again, he is very vicious with his flows and bringing some fast raps to the table, even though he's not saying too much. The Jesus refrain that Travis Scott kind of uses as the chorus for this track is very reminiscent of Kanye West, who was kind of like his mentor in a sense, and you see that throughout his music. There are a lot of, or not a lot of moments, but Travis Scott, a lot of his rapping delivery at points can be very Kanye influenced, and this is one moment where that shines through to me. Along with these vicious flows and the soundscape that Travis sets up here that he's going to bring for the whole album, he does also bring through that content that I was talking about with the 3 W's. He's talking a lot about getting fucked up and being with a lot of girls late at night, although he does allow for one brief moment of vulnerability when he is questioning why he's still chasing all this stuff even though he has already become so successful. Which is an interesting thing because he's still rapping about chasing these things 10 years later at points. So I don't know if this is some form of faux vulnerability where he really wasn't questioning that and just threw it in there as a kind of deep bar. Maybe he was questioning that 10 years ago and has just decided to still chase those things. I'm not going to psychoanalyze Travis on this because there's not a lot to go off of, but if there's one thing I could tell you about Travis Scott based off his music, he likes having sex, he likes drinking a lot of alcohol, and he likes doing cocaine. That is some takeaways you could get from this guy's music. And again, that a lot of rappers like those things and rap about it a lot, but it's interesting to see him questioning these ideals a little bit and not ever really revisiting questioning them in his career. This song does end a little early, in my opinion. 2 minutes in, it comes to a halt, and we get this long outro, which also serves as an intro into the hazy, drugged out, psychedelic mixtape that Travis Scott has given us and is leading us into with the prayer. Moving on to Mamacita, this song's instrumental is carried by a strong electric guitar riff and some rapping background drums that are constantly going off. This psychedelic instrumental is produced by Travis himself, Metro Boomin, Mike Dean, and DJ Dahi, which is a pretty damn elite lineup, especially going all the way back to 2014. Metro wasn't even on the map like that. And as well as these guys being producers, they're all credited writers. Also, another credited writer besides Thug and Rich Homie Quan, who are featured on here, is Pharrell Williams. And for a track that isn't particularly bar heavy or have anything too catchy in my opinion, I wonder what Pharrell worked on for writing this, because that Mamacita refrain, I know it's probably what draws a lot of people into this track, does not do it for me if I'm going to be completely honest. It's kind of a drawback for the song for me as it gets old very quickly, although I do like what Rich Homie Quan is doing on this track on the pre-chorus before Travis Scott starts doing the Mamacita refrain later on in the song. He has a couple bars he drops and a nice lower, more monotone delivery. This does strike me as a should have been Future feature. I feel like he could have done this just as well, if not just as well. He could have done this better, but Rich Homie Quan does a good job with it here. Another Travis Scott, again, like most of this tape, is coming through with some vicious, aggressive flows, and in a moment that is very influenced by Ye, he cuts the beat out for about 3 bars to talk about big-ass porn star women and fucking them, essentially, which again, very Kanye-esque. Who else is cutting out the beat to say some grotesque things like that? Ye. Rich Homie Quan's verse overall is also pretty good. I think what carries his verse and this whole song, to be honest, is Thug. Thug has a good verse, but he's also throughout the whole song coming through with outlandish and zany ad-libs that just add so much life to the track, especially on these Rich Homie Quan verse, the refrain on Travis's verse. Every time Thug comes through with his Mamacita or his high-pitched screeches, it adds a lot of life to this desolate, hypnotic trap song. I know a lot of people adore this song, and I definitely like it, but it's not one of my favorites off the track. I think Young Thug is really what holds this song together. Quintana Part 2 is another track. I wouldn't say Mamacita is one of the weaker songs on the track list, but Quintana Part 2 is, and this has one of the more boring instrumentals, doesn't stand out from the rest. I could see the appeal of this song, but I can't listen to this song without thinking about how hard he's knocking Young Thug. The way he just starts off this verse, immediately rapping. Walked in this bitch, I just got it through finesse and designer. Oh my god, it's no rental, gold plated, no need to remind ya. The way he delivers these bars so eccentrically with his delivery and his cadence, and the way he holds out certain syllables and words is so reminiscent of Young Thug, especially at this time. And I don't know, I'm not going to say Travis Scott's biting Young Thug so hard. He's on this tape twice. But this whole song, I think, would just be a lot better if Thug did it himself. You have excessive lyrics about fashion and designer clothes, which is very much in the lane of Young Thug. And as well as not just on those first two bars, but throughout the whole song, the delivery, cadences, lyrics, the way Travis is playing with his voice, and even the way the instrumental builds throughout feels just like some classic Young Thug. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Travis Scott was finding his style at this time. But personally, like I said, I would rather hear Thug do this track. And even if he did, I don't think it would be that good. I'm not the biggest fan of the instrumental or what's going on in the song as a whole. I know the original Quintana is kind of looked at as a classic Travis Scott song. Not the biggest fan of that one either, to be honest. The heavily favored Drugs You Should Try by Travis Scott is led by another electric guitar riff from Mike Dean that is just intoxicating. And I really enjoyed the nocturnal and progressive soundscape that Travis and Mike Dean are offering you on this track. Content-wise, it's a pretty run-of-the-mill Travis song, although it's a little bit more focused than every other track on this album. The contents he's running with is pretty much just about him getting blackout drunk at a party with a girl that he is very attracted to in a very lustful way. And it's kind of like this do I love her not thing. But obviously, as the lyrics entail, Travis does not really love her like that. There's also a lot of vocal distortion on this track, which there is, again, throughout this whole project, which Travis is known for. But again, we do got to talk about how in 2011, A$AP Rocky was really one of the people in the 2010s decade to popularize having distorted vocals on mainstream attempting rap songs and using them in this psychedelic hip-hop space. I'm not saying he's biting him. Travis is finding his sound, and we got to point out where he's taking influences from at this time. I do understand the large appeal of this song. If you guys saw my top 5 songs on this album reel on Instagram, you'll see that this is number 4, which I know a lot of people would say is criminally low. But as good as the beat is and as good as the rapping performances, the content here is just really shallow, in my opinion, for a song I've seen compared to 90210. I feel like, again, as great as this track is, it's not offering a whole lot different from anything else on this album. Even though it does seem to be focused, I don't think it's a lot going on with it. Yo, look at this ladybug flying around my room right now, gang. Oh, he fell, but he's chilling below the camera right now. Now we're talking about Don't Play, which features the 1975 and Big Sean. This, for my money, is the best produced song on the album. We have a great sample of the 1975 song, M-O-N-E-Y, as well as some of the hardest hitting electric guitar on the album, which again, this track also produced by Mike Dean, of course, as well as vinyls. We have some heavy auto crooning from Travis and his I Am Playing With These Guys refrain or chorus, whatever you want to call it. But I really enjoy this. This is the best repetitive chorus he has on the project, because a lot of the choruses and refrains he goes to are just very repetitive, repeating the same line or two. I think this is the best use of it for sure. Again, Travis is flowing very fast, very hungry, very dynamic here. Travis Scott is very dynamic with his rapping ability, even though these days he's not the most rapidy rapper, and he's not the most rapidy rapper here either, but he's definitely on some different timing with the tempo and again dynamicness he's bringing to this track and to every track on this album. All of his rapping performances here are very impressive, even if he's only rapping about very shallow, very surface level things, as he does on this track. This is an easy song to get hyped to and have a good time though, from the beat, from Scott's performance, and as well as Big Sean, who has a very average 2014 Big Sean party track feature where he's just talking about getting right, having a good time, being with women, like nothing too crazy. He has better wordplay and one of the best verses on this whole album for sure. Definitely one of my favorite songs here. Now we got to talk about one of the fan favorite Travis Scott and Young Thug collabs, Skyfall, which has Travis Scott, Metro Boomin, and Mike Dean behind the boards. This is a recipe for success. They cook up a very dark, eerie, and dramatic psychedelic trap beat, which is good, but not my favorite on the album. Travis's chorus here leaves me unimpressed, and honestly, again, another situation where I think Young Thug definitely should have taken this chorus. Thug is a chorus guy, in my opinion at least, and he would have killed on this. I enjoy both their performances, and this is definitely a solid, top half of the track list song. Very good, banger, but honestly, probably one of my least favorite collabs from Scott and Thug, which I know a lot of people might be surprised at, but I just think they've come together on so many other tracks that are more entertaining and have more to offer than Skyfall. Zombies is a track that I'm not particularly a fan of. It has a video game ass beat that I don't particularly love, even though it is very innovative for the time that it came out. Not a lot of people were in this type of production lane, which again is one thing you have to credit Travis for on DVR. But at this point in the album, other than the production, there's not a lot here that I could talk about because Travis Scott's kind of using the same type of flows, even though I am very impressed with these flows, right? They're great. But there's only so much I can mention how good they are. The lyrics here, nothing's really standing out to me as like good bars. It's kind of just a basic run-of-the-mill. You know, I've been up all night. I had sex 8 times. I'm gonna go to the party and get right. Like, I can only reiterate Travis talking about these things so many times and not, you know, waste your guys' time and make you click off the video. But yeah, not the biggest fan of Zombies. And that pre-chorus where it's kind of like Travis Scott, but it's vocally distorted a bunch, so it sounds like several people. That whole thing is like corny, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of that. Although I will interject here to talk about how Travis does have a bar that catches my eyes on this song, where he says, "You ain't feeling it cause you're sober." This is definitely the type of album where if I was high as shit, I would really be vibing to it. Like, I didn't give it that type of treatment, that type of listen, you know what I'm saying? Because personally, that's just not where I'm at right now in my life. Maybe one day, because if I did, I could definitely see myself vibing with a track like Zombies and a lot of these instrumentals very more, because they are so complex and so stimulating. There's a lot going on, and it was this came out before that type of production was popular. So again, I have to pat Travis on the back. I have to credit him for how well he saw the direction of rap going 10 years ago. Like I said, this was ahead of its time. The production here, not like anything else really in the mainstream trap landscape at the time, except maybe other than some Future albums, but even they weren't as psychedelic and experimental as what Travis Scott had to offer here. Sloppy Toppy with the Migos and with Pee Wee Longway has a solid, hypnotic instrumental with some good nocturnal keys, but the chorus of this song is really what is holding me back from enjoying it, despite the fact that the Migos, at least, and Pee Wee Longway deliver some solid verses. Travis is probably the least impressive guy here, which is the only song I will say he got significantly out-rapped by his features, but he just wasn't doing it for me here, personally. Like, why the fuck does he gotta rap, give me Sloppy Toppy like I'm the Sloppy Toppy goddess? Like, I don't know why they thought this would be a good song to cook up, because again, I could see being in, you know, like 15, 16, 17 and listening to this and being like, oh yeah, like they rapping about some shit. But then it's like the whole concept of having a song where the whole chorus is sloppy toppy is really fucking dumb, because that's like it's a really stupid statement. Like, why? I feel really fucking like cornball for just saying it as much as I did to explain this point. So I'm refraining from stating the name of the title of this song again. And one thing I can say about a rapper that I've given a lot of disrespect to over the past however many years I've been listening to rap is that Quavo has an all-timer verse here. He's bringing some fiery energy and absolutely steals the show here. Basement Freestyle is another overall highlight and production highlight. I love the way this track progresses throughout with the techno synths going in the background, and the mosh pit party, big beat drop style of the drum progression is really engaging and makes this song super hype and super fun to listen to. The build up to the first time the beat drops and Travis says all this money on the table is super enthralling, and that beat drop is actually very hype. Probably one of Travis's best mosh pit songs, I would imagine. I would love to hear it in that setting. I hope I get to one day. Again, typical Travis Scott content here, especially for this project, but it'll get you right. It'll get you in that zone, and it'll get you having a good time. I like, at this point in the album too, we're getting a lot of Houston references and love throughout the project, and I particularly love how he refers to it as the Third Coast, because put some respect on the South. It really is the Third Coast. It's obviously at the top of the rap game right now. When you look at Travis Scott, when you look at Playboy Cardi, when you look at Young Thug, Future, Metro, the success of the Migos, all the most popular trends in rap for the last 10 years have come from Atlanta for the most part, but also you got to give Houston a shout out for what Travis has been doing there. Your boys in the backyard. It's just a good time song. And again, I can say all the stuff about this track that I've said at the last several. Good production, it's psychedelic, it's hypnotic, there's very good drum progression. And Travis Scott's rapping about getting folks up and having a good time. There's nothing I can say about this track that I haven't said about the rest. I will say, I'm not glazing over this because it's not like I don't like this track. This is actually probably a top 3 off the album for me. It's just there's only so much I could say about what Travis Scott really has to offer here. He dialed in on the soundscape he wanted and did not switch up what he was writing about literally at all once. And his flows are very stagnant, which again is why this album isn't sticking with me as much as it does other people, but I do respect this album. Surprisingly, I never thought I'd say this about a Travis Scott album, but when it's all said and done, Days Before Rodeo will be an album that I respect more than I enjoy it. Then we got to talk about the official outro, Gray. Not the biggest fan of this track, to be honest. The upbeat drums, they sound kind of like some African or exotic drums that are in the background of this track. They're a very prominent instrument, and they kind of take me out of the aesthetic for this project because it clashes so much with everything we heard before, and it just feels a little out of place, to be honest. Overall, I'm not a fan of this beat, and this track is the one outlier where I'm really not liking the production. We get some more early melodic singing Travis here, and he's alright at it. He definitely hasn't honed his craft and become the master of melodies that he is known as today, and he definitely is still looking for those pockets and cadences that he utilizes so well. But yeah, kind of an underwhelming outro, and Back, the bonus track, is really just not my favorite either. I know he's dropped like 5 other tracks with the digital download deluxe, but I didn't get that, so I'm just talking about Back. I don't like the chorus or the use of the word back in the verses. The beat is kind of run-of-the-mill for this album and for this sound. And yeah, not a track I'll be revisiting. So again, on kind of like my conclusion for the project. Extremely instrumental, extremely influential. This album's release was pivotal for the sound of hip-hop music and trap music for the next 10 years. There's no doubt about that, right? The production style Travis is incorporating here was a necessary step for us to get albums like Rodeo, Astro, and Utopia, which was a necessary step for us to get Rage as a whole, with these overstimulating, hypnotic trap beats, which are also psychedelic and not really about, again, the content, but just going for that vibe, that high-energy party vibe. Travis Scott is one of those people who kind of paved the lane for that. Rapping-wise, he is getting his footing here, although on an artistry sonic level, he was clearly aware of what he wanted to do and the vibes he wanted to encapsulate on this project. Like I said, he does have good rapping and good flows here, but he doesn't switch them up too much, so the initial enjoyment of them does wear off a little bit. And again, I enjoy this high-voltage rapping style, and I hope we get more of it in the future. The lyrical ability and a content matter he brings in here. Not that Travis Scott was ever known for his lyrical ability or the, having super conscious tracks, but again, they're kind of at an all-time low here. The tracks aren't very focused on anything else other than partying and having sex. And at least Travis Scott, we know these days, could make a track focused on one thing, even if it is related to those things. He could still do that. He has better lyrics nowadays, for sure. Not that he's, dog shit here, and not that he's like a god now, but he's definitely stepped up his pen. He's definitely gotten vulnerable on the track before, otherwise we wouldn't have tracks like Coffee Bean or Telekinesis, right? He hasn't diversified the content he brings in too much, but it is enough to say that there is pretty significant artistical growth, at least for what Travis Scott is doing. But on a, my last words type of thing, I feel like this project is definitely overrated. I feel like a lot of people probably look at it with nostalgia goggles, as a lot of people do with a lot of things, as I do myself with a lot of things, right? Everyone is a victim to nostalgia. That's a bias you can't really get rid of. If you're looking back fondly at a time in your life, you're looking back fondly at that soundscape too, right? Or at the sonics and the music that you were enjoying at that part of your life, right? Like, that's not a crazy concept. That's not to say that if you enjoy this album, you shouldn't like it because it's bad. Because this album is not bad. And again, I do two album ratings here. I'm gonna do the number rating, which I think I could comfortably say is a 7. I'm on the border of like 6 or 7, definitely a lower 7. Because on the one hand, I'm like, I don't know if this is better than Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight yet, right? I can't tell if it is or isn't, because I feel like the weaknesses are definitely here, weak tracks. Everything gets a little bit stale, in my opinion, from the production to the content matter. But on the other end, this album is extremely influential and extremely fun at a lot of moments. There's clearly merit to what Travis is doing here on an artistic level. So we'll say, 7 for now. But on the personal enjoyment, on the 5-finger scale, which is that personal enjoyment, I'm giving it a 1. Because there's not a lot I'm ever going to really revisit here. As much as some of these tracks are good and are hype bangers, I can't see myself listening to them outside of like a party type of setting. But that's just me personally. Be sure to let me know in the comments your favorite songs off this album. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? And how are you feeling this? Overall, just let me know what you're thinking of the album. I appreciate all of you guys tuning in. It means a lot. DBR, I'm very glad to finally have it on streaming. And yeah, if you're interested in other Travis Scott content, I dropped a I dropped a video on Utopia's 1 year anniversary. I dropped my King of the Mischievous South 2 review by Denzel Curry. And I got a 2023 album tier list I would heavily recommend checking out, as well as my top 10 rappers from Atlanta just dropped a few days ago. So if you're interested in more content, there's bangers waiting for you. But until then, I will see you guys next time. Oh, actually, don't forget to subscribe and that shit. I forgot about that. The IG's Talking Hip Hop, and the Talking Hip Hop show comes out every Wednesday at noon on Spotify. Go check that. Peace.